Hey everyone, it's Akshay here, and welcome to this video series where we will be creating the stopwatch in Ready. So let's take a look at the final project. Here we have a sunflower and two pieces of arugula, and these will be moving around when we press start. So let's check it out. Let's press play, let's press start, and there you can see the millisecond hand moving and the second hand moving around in a clockwise motion. If we press stop, it stops. And when we press restart, the whole scene restarts. There we go. So let's go ahead and take a look at the steps we need to take in order to make this. So here are the steps in slide 3 of the presentation, steps to build. So first we'll need to add a secondhand object and name it and make it a non-solid. So here's that. And in step 2, we're going to have to add a second pivot object right in the middle. In step 3, we're going to give this second pivot the join and rotate behaviors, and in 4, we'll create the pivot class and add our second pivot object to that class. In step 5, we're going to copy our second pivot and name this one millisecond pivot. In step 6, we're going to add the millisecond object or millisecond hand right here and also make it a non-solid. In step 7, we'll connect the second pivot to the second object, and in step 8 we'll connect to the millisecond pivot to the millisecond hand and set the rotation as well in both steps 7 and 8. And in step 9 we'll add the start text box, in step 10 we'll add the stop text box, and in step 11 we'll add the restart box. From steps 12 we'll start adding our events. Event 1 is going to say start the clock whenever start is touched, event 2 is going to say stop the clock when stop is touched, and event 3 is going to say restart the clock when reset is touched. And for step 15, we'll design our scene a little bit and add a background and add a round object to the background behind the two secondhand and millisecond hand objects. In step 16, we'll add the 12, 3, 6, and 9 number labels and position them accordingly. So let's get started making the stopwatch. So for step 1, let's add the secondhand object. Let's go into the library, go into plants, and let's add the arugula. Cool, so once we have this in our scene, let's change the name to secondhand, and let's change the solid to off. And that will be it for step 1. So for step 2, let's add the second pivot object and make it a non-solid as well. So let's go into the library, let's go into basic shapes, and let's add in a circle. Let's give the circle a color of slightly pink. That's good. Let's turn off the solid, and let's name it second pivot. Great. Let's also resize this so it's really small compared to the arugula, and let's place it in the center of our scene. Awesome, and now we're done with step 2. So for step 3, let's give the second pivot object the behaviors join and rotate. So let's go into the behaviors, add new behavior, and let's add the join and rotate behaviors to this object. And that will be it for step 3. For step 4, let's add this second pivot object to the pivot class. So let's go into classes, click create new class, and let's name this pivot. Let's press save class, and this object should be automatically added to the pivot class. Once it's in the pivot class, you're done with this step. For step 5, let's make a copy of this second pivot. Let's click on the second pivot and click this button right here. This will make a copy of our object. It will already be in the pivot class, so we just have to change the name and appearance to mil pivot, and this stands for millisecond pivot. And once we're done with that, we are done with step 5. So for step 6, we want to add the millisecond hand like we have the second hand right here. Now my millisecond hand is going to be the exact same object, so I'll just make a copy of the second hand and name it millisecond hand. But be sure if you add a different object to make it a non-solid as well. Since I copied this object, it will already be a non-solid. And once you're done with that, you're done with step 6. So for step 7, we want to connect the second pivot to the secondhand object. So let's go into second pivot, let's go into its behaviors, go into join 1, and let's join this to the second hand. You'll see this blue line appear, which means that it is officially joined. We also want show joint to be turned off, as we don't want to see the blue line when we play the scene. Next, we want to change the RPM to its lowest at 1 RPM, because the second hand goes 1 full rotation every minute. And we want active to be set off, as we want the active to be turned on programmatically in the event manager whenever we press start. Now we also need to turn the direction of the rotate behavior to clockwise. Once you're done with that, you're done with step 7. Next, for step 8, we want to connect our millisecond pivot to the millisecond hand. So let's click here to select our millisecond pivot, go into its behaviors. Now its RPM can stay at 60 RPM as it goes around 60 rotations every minute. Let's also change active to off, as we don't want it to start immediately. Let's change the direction to clockwise, and let's join it to the millisecond hand. Once we're done with that, we are done with step 8. So for step 9, let's add the start text box. Let's go into our library, and under interface and text, let's drag out text box right here. And we can edit the text in the appearance tab. So let's go into appearance and change this to start. Let's have it be in the center at the bottom, and let's change its color to green. Let's change the first color and the second color as well, and there we go. We can also make this a little bit bigger. And that's it for step 9. In step 10, we'll make the stop text box. So let's go ahead and just clone this text box right here and move it to the left. Let's change its text to stop, and let's give it a color of red. And that should be it for step 10. For step 11, we'll add the restart text box. So let's make another clone of the start text box and move it to the right. Here in appearance, we'll just add a prefix re, and that should be restart right there. And let's give this a color of, let's say, yellow. And that should be good. Now one thing you want to do after you make all these text boxes is to go into each, and in appearance, change its actual name to whatever it stands for. So let's name this to restart. Let's name start to start. And let's name stop to stop. This way we know which text box we're dealing with in the event manager. And once you're done with this, you're done with setting up the text boxes in step 11. Before we start step 12, let's arrange these arugulas properly. So let's move the second hand to the top right here and have it facing, have the blue line be vertical. And let's have this arugula rotate so that it is parallel with the blue line. Let's do the same for the second hand. Let's move it so that the blue line is vertical, and let's rotate the second hand so it is parallel with the blue line. And there we go, we are good. So let's start step 12. Let's go into the event manager and say when the start text box senses that it's being touched down, let's have all the objects in the pivot class have their rotation set active to yes. So if we press done and press play, we can see that whenever we press start, the arugulas start to rotate. Awesome. And that's it for step 12. For step 13, we want to add action to the stop text box. So let's go into the event manager and say add new event and say when stop senses that it's being touched down, let's have the pivot class rotate set active to no. So if we press done and press play, we can see that we can start the rotation and stop the rotation of all the pivot objects. And that's it for step 13. For step 14, we want to reset the scene whenever restart is pressed. So let's go into the event manager, press add new event, and say when restart senses it's being touched down, let's have the system restart scene. So this will essentially do the same thing as restarting the arugulas back to their original positions. So let's press play, press start, stop, and restart, and they should be in their original positions. And there we go. That's it for step 14. So for step 15, let's design our scene a little bit as it's pretty boring right now. Let's go into the library, go into backgrounds, and drag in a background. I'll be dragging in the grass background. Awesome. And next, we want some round object behind our clock. So let's go into artwork, and I'll be choosing a sunflower. So I'll go into plants and choose the yellow daisy right here. So I'll drag this over the pivots, and it should be under the pivot right here. And I'll make this a little bit bigger. That should be good. Now, if you don't see the arugulas above the sunflower or the yellow daisy, let's click on the arugulas and press this button, which should bring it a layer above. So let's click this until we see the second hand above the yellow daisy. There we go, we see it. Now let's also do this for the millisecond hand a few times. And we should be good. And that's it for step 15. For step 16, let's add the 12, 3, 6, and 9 markings as you would see on a regular clock. Let's go into the library, go into Interface and Text, and drag out a text box. Let's go into Appearance, and name this text 12. Let's change the color to white as black is pretty hard to see with a green background. And let's make this a little bigger. That should be a good size. And let's make a few duplicates of this and drag them around. Once you have them around the circular object, let's change its text and appearance to their correct values. And there you go. You now have the completed project of stopwatch in ready. Let's press play and check it out. Let's press start. It starts the stopwatch, and when we press stop, it stops the stopwatch, and when we press restart, it restarts the whole scene. Now I still see this blue line right here, so let's disable that visibility in behaviors, show joint, and turn off. And we should be good. Let's play this one more time, press start, and there we go. Everything seems to be looking good. So there you go, everyone. This is the completed stopwatch activity in ready. Be sure to check out more activities on the website, and I'll see you in the next video.